Thank you. Thanks for having me here at this forum. And I want to just start out by saying I'm definitely not an expert on the South, though I'm from North Carolina now, grew up here in California. But the South is very diverse, and we have states, Texas, Florida, Mississippi, North Carolina. They're all very different, and the issues they are facing right now are also very different. So I'll do my best to characterize generally, but I won't have the specifics for those, the diversity that's there. North Carolina itself is very diverse, from the coastal plain to the mountains. We have very different issues that range across the states. I also want to just briefly acknowledge my co-authors who were gracious in providing me some details in their disciplines that aren't my disciplines. So as far as soils go, the southern soils are generally very advanced in weathering and have a low natural fertility. And so millions of acres are severely eroded, and now we have added pressure from urbanization and are trying to figure out how to maintain the soils. They would be very responsive to good soil management, maybe more responsive than other places in the country. With regard to water, at least in many of the southern states, we've had adequate water over the years, and so drought is relatively new in the severity of the drought, and part of that is because of the urbanization and the populations now that are there. And we're not very equipped, I think, to deal with that. We put in water restrictions. We had a very serious drought in North Carolina the year before last, and people complain when they're asked to water their lawns just every other day. So it's a difficult thing, and once the drought is over, people completely forget about conservation at all. So it's a mindset that we're not used to dealing with there that's, I think, probably unique to the southern region. And also, I think because the water treatment plants get their money from water use, there's not a lot of incentive to conserve water in times of water abundance. With regard to climate change, I think we've heard a lot about the impacts already, so I don't need to go into a lot of detail. But in the South, I think the biggest concerns are the fluctuating temperatures and the extremes within very short periods of time that we might experience. And we just had an example of that just 3 weeks ago, where we had a stretch of weather that got up to 80 degrees and 3 days later had 14-degree weather. So this just wreaks havoc on some of the early spring crops. And also of concern with regard to the fluctuating temperatures and climate change would be new pests and diseases that would be moving into the area. As far as farm structure and size, the South remains the place in the United States with the most poverty, and also the difference in poverty between the rural and the urban areas is more extreme than any other place in the country. There's also racial inequities in the food system that exists. We've talked about those as regard to access, but they're also very evident, the disparities in opportunity and support for farmers and others engaged in the food system. And if we look around this room, we're not a very diverse group, and we need to bring all those voices to the table. It's just something to note and pay attention to, I think. We get concerned about the aging of our farmers. I think from the current census, the average age now of producers is 57. And a number that was new to me in looking over the census data is the number of operators under 25 years of age has decreased 30% since 2002. So the young folks aren't coming along. I think we've probably talked about health and access disparities, but those things are definitely evident in the South. The calorie-dense and nutrients are often in the less expensive food. I guess I want to make a couple points just generally, maybe in response to the last panel about the food availability and food independence, and I'll come back to that. So, sorry. You all set? I'm set.